Hey everyone, today I'm going to give you a tech preview of some of the new features coming in Particle Illusion as part of the next release of Continuum and the standalone version. So let's just jump straight in. Okay, so this is super exciting. It's definitely the biggest update for Particle Illusion in years. And there's new features for both motion graphics and visual effects. The first of those is Turbulence, allowing you to add much more random organic movement to your particle sims. Next is particle lines, and such a simple thing, but it really will increase your creativity when you're working with Particle Illusion and give you more creative options. There's also an improvement to deflectors, and that changes the way particles move when they hit a deflector, which is really good. And also, unbelievably, 3D particles. Particle Illusion has always been a 2D particle generator, but that all changes now in the 2021 version. So super excited to show you what's new. If you watched the previous sneak peek that I did for SeaGraph, you probably still find this quite useful because things have been improved and worked upon since then. And I've changed up the presentation a little bit to add those new things. So let's get into it. So first of all, let's take a look at turbulence. I have an area emitter here just with a bunch of particles, just so we can visualize the turbulence a little more easily. Come into my effect controls and launch Particle Illusion. So as I mentioned, turbulence allows you to add more random organic movement to your particle simulations. And this is something Particle Illusion has been sorely missing, but not anymore. You can see here under my emitter, I now have a Turbulence Field option. And if I increase that, check out what happens to the particles on the stage. We get that nice kind of fractal noise turbulent look. If I hit play, you can see the particles are being born and dying, but they're not actually moving yet. If I just increase the auto evolve speed, now we get this nice turbulent movement to the particles. So nice to have this. It's going to really increase that a little bit. Just play that back. Got lots of particles in here and it's playing back nice and quickly. Now, the emitter also has these global parameters, position turbulence and size turbulence. If I bring position turbulence down to 0 and size turbulence down to 0, then we go back to what we had. So you can do global changes to position and size turbulence using those, but particles also have their own turbulence values. So particles have a turbulence field option where you can change the scale and offset of the individual particle turbulence. Particles also have their own turbulence and size turbulence options. So if I increase the particle position turbulence, you can see we get a more exaggerated look. And if I come back up here and just adjust the random offset, you can see how that gives a more diffuse look. And I've got a nice example of swarming, which I'll show you in a moment, which uses that setting. Isn't that nice? It looks like it's being moved around almost by water or something like that. So that gives you a general idea about what turbulence does. Let's take a look at another example. It's going to cancel that. And just launch Particle Illusion again. So as I mentioned, emitters have the global position and turbulence, the global position turbulence and size turbulence option, and particles have their own options. But particles obviously are individual, so they have individual position and size options. So I can adjust them individually. So if I just press play, you can see I've got one emitter here, but two particles. And they're just going to swing around and come back. Let's just see. There we go. So the blue one looks slightly different to the orange one. And that's nice. So you can control the look of individual particles or the turbulence of individual particles independent of the emitter. So if I come down to the blue particle and let's see, come down to position turbulence, let me just zoom in. Watch what happens to the blue particles. I can get a really nice turbulent look and not affect the orange particle. Let's try that again. Just like that. So that's great. So if I want to now make global changes to that, or increase the position turbulence globally or decrease it, I come up to the emitter. And that affects both particles or all particles in the emitter. Just like that. It's just so nice to see these turbulent options now in particle illusion. Okay, let's take a look at another example. And super emitters haven't been excluded. They can also benefit from turbulence. Just jump in here again. So this is a super sparkle burst preset. Just play that back. And that looks pretty nice, but what if we add a little bit of turbulence to that? You can see at the moment position turbulence for the emitter, position turbulence and size turbulence are 0. And super emitters have this sub or free emitter that's indicated by the F. And you can see free emitters have their own position turbulence, and they also have position turbulence variation, just like particles do. And as well as, where is it down here? Position turbulence over life. So I've actually keyframed position turbulence over life. So about halfway through the particle's life, they start to get some turbulence. At the moment, they're not getting anything because I have the global position turbulence at 0. Let me make that 100. And you can see it's really going crazy. So they'll start off not turbulent, and then halfway through their life, they'll start to pick up that turbulence. Just like that. Definitely adds a lot more interest to that super emitter. This next version is just one of the emitters that ships with particle illusion. At the top, I have the emitter animating from left to right, and there's no turbulence. And the bottom is doing the same, but I've actually added turbulence, and here you can see the difference. So that's what we have currently in particle illusion. And you could make that look a little more organic using a grid force, for example. But now that we have turbulence options, you can see what a big difference that makes. And I could add a grid force to that as well to make that even more organic and random. And lastly, here's an example of swarming that I mentioned. Just using turbulence settings. Just make that a bit bigger. So that's a really interesting example created by Alan, and definitely not possible in the current version. Okay, so turbulence, very, very useful new features coming in Particle Illusion 2021. So let's go back to the project and take a look at lines. Lines are great. They're really simple to use and really can embellish your particle sims. So I've got this version here, which has no lines applied. It is using the turbulence options. So this is a ring emitter, and this is animated using turbulence. Just like that. Let's see what we can do if we turn on some lines. Okay, so I'll just hit play, and we'll just zoom in a little bit. All right, so lines is a new option under the particle, and that's in the properties category. I'm going to twirl these ones close. So you've got options to connect to emitter, connect to birth position, and connect particles. Let's try each one. So if I connect to the emitter, wow, look at that. Gives you kind of these light rays. So that already makes that simulation look much more interesting. Just turn that one off for a sec. And now we can check connect to birth position. And that's a different look again. So these particular particles are being, let's see, up here under the emitter, they're being emitted at points, and that's points around the circle. And you can see the number of points is set to 85. So if I decrease that, then I have less emission points and obviously less lines. But that's really nice. You get these kind of waving particles that are connected via the line to the circle emitter. Just like that. And let's take a look at the third option, which is connect particles. So this connects the particles to one another. And there's a max line length. If I just increase that, we're going to get a lot more lines. So that's another look. If I just decrease that again, let's bring that down to, say, 10. Maybe that's a little low. There you go, something like that. Now we only get a few connections. Which is really nice. Let me just get this timeline out of the way a little bit. So what if we turn a few of these on at the same time? Let's try connect emitter, and we'll leave connect particles turned on. Like that. And you also have options for thickness, line color, and opacity. If I turn them all on, then it starts to look a little busy. Let's turn off connect particles. So now they're connected to their birth position and also connected to the emitter. So super easy to use. Just literally check these boxes and see what they give you. You can see how that would bring the thousands of presets that ship with particle illusion to life. Just give them a new lease of life. And it's fun just to apply different presets into the stage and turn these on and see what it gives you. Really nice. Let's take a look at a few more examples. Okay, so I've just done a few comps here and I've set a few things up. So if I just preview this one, there's the original sparkle burst and there's the version with lines turned on. Let me just give a little bit more of that. Make this full frame. Original and lines. Look at the difference that makes. Might just increase the length of this comp just a little bit, give us a little bit more. Better. So original and lines turned on. And obviously that's a super emitter as well. So super emitters also benefit from those lines. Really nice. Here's another example. So that's the original and here's lines turned on. Makes a big difference with lines turned on. And here's a combination of a number of different ones all put together. Let's take a look at this. Just using After Effects blend modes. So much fun to play with these. This one's interesting. This is a line emitter, and this has also got emit at points turned on, and also using turbulence. So we get almost almost a cloth-like kind of appearance to this, or a cloth-like movement. And this last example is something that's slightly more finished. It's a little bit slow because I've used a number of different versions of particle illusion inside the pre-comp. Let's just see if we can just pre-render a little bit of it. So a number of different applications of particle illusion just comped together in After Effects. And it gives you that really nice organic movement. You can see how the turbulence is making this look as if it's maybe underwater or being blown by wind. And with the lines turned on, makes that look really interesting. And that was just me playing around in After Effects for 10-15 minutes. And I could have just spent hours just doing different versions of those because that's so much fun to play with. All right, let's move on. Next, let's take a look at the new Deflector randomness options. Now, this one's really easy to understand. On the left here, we have particles bouncing off a deflector, and this is the current behavior with bouncing particles on a deflector. And the one on the right is the 2021 version with a new randomness feature. Let's just play this back. So you can see on the left, you get kind of this snake or worm, but on the right, we get a much more realistic movement. This wouldn't have been acceptable if you were doing any kind of water effects, anything where you wanted things to bounce more naturally, but this version is much better. Let's open up the project, and I want to show you these settings. I'm just going to turn off the proxy. Okay, just zoomed in a bit there. So here's my deflector. And when the particles hit, they bounce off. So that's thanks to a new setting with the deflector, which is the randomness. So if I make that 0, this is just going to bounce straight back up, like that. By increasing the randomness, we can have that spread out, just like that. But that's not all. We also have a new break particles option. If I just check that on, you can see as the particles hit the deflector, they start to break. And you also have minimum and maximum pieces, so you don't have to have everything break. So there's definitely some control there. You can see how they're breaking up. Still a few particles falling through the deflector, and obviously this is an early version. We're still working on that. But in this case, doing something like water or bubbles, you'd really want that anyway. So that now makes deflectors much more useful. Let's just close that up, and I'll show you one more example. I just hacked together a quick kind of waterfall option. Once again, on the left-hand side, we have the existing, and on the right-hand side, we have the new randomness. I mean, that doesn't look realistic at all. And this is probably needs a little bit more work to get this to look even more realistic, but the movement is by far more realistic than this one. Fantastic. Okay, now let's move on to what probably is the biggest new feature in Particle Illusion 2021, which is 3D. And this one you just have to see to believe. So I've got a smoky sparkle burst here, just a preset. So let's go into particle illusion and take a look. All right, so this is a 2D preset, and it looks as you'd expect it to look. We now have a new 3D button up here, and if I click that, watch what happens over here in the controls. That will turn on the camera, and if I come down and twirl open the emitter, I can check on emit in 3D. Okay, so we now have a 3D emitter. We have different camera options. If I come up and, for example, spin the camera, you can see that that is spinning in 3D, and that is still blowing my mind, even though I've been working with this for a few weeks. I could tumble the camera and look at that from above. So welcome to 3D particle illusion. We've missed you, but we're glad you're here. Look at that. Let's bring that back to the beginning. Boom. And obviously I can animate these parameters as well. Let's take a look at some other examples. Now I was using the particle illusion camera for that example. I've got an example here which uses the After Effects camera. So you can see up here in the particle illusion effect, we have a use comp camera option. So if I turn that on, I've got a camera in here that's just linked up to a null object. And if I just rotate that null on the Y, my camera is now rotating around that particle simulation. So being able to use the After Effects camera now allows you to integrate particle illusion in 3D with your After Effects 3D layers, which is fantastic. And I can rotate that on the X. Let me just bring the Y rotation back to 0. This looks even better when you're just rotating on the X. So I can go right up above that simulation and even put it upside down. Isn't that great? So After Effects camera, now recognized by particle illusion. Here's another example. This is one I've pre-rendered. So on the left-hand side, we have what the simulation would look like if it was 2D and rotating, and the right-hand side is a 3D simulation. And I mean, the difference is totally obvious. Another example here, just some smoke. Let me just come back to my comp. This one is not quite as obvious that this is rotating in 3D, but you can see I've got an axis here, or some axes, and I've got the 2D version next to it. I've just comped this up in After Effects. Camera's rotating around this scene, or around each one. I've pre-composed them into this composition. But that's what it would have looked like in the current version, and that's what it now looks like in 3D. Really nice. And lines don't miss out either. Obviously, we could turn a preset with lines on into 3D, and we'll get this result. So there's our super sparkle burst with lines turned on, and we're orbiting the camera around. So, turbulence, particle lines, deflector improvements, and 3D particles. And even one of those, for me as a user, would have been like, whoa, in a new release of particle illusion. But to have all four really takes this version of particle illusion to the next level. All really useful new features that are going to enhance what you can do in particle illusion, in motion graphics and visual effects. Okay, so that's it for me. I'll hand back to the team.